My name is Katia Turner, and I am the Zone 1 Resource Teacher Elementary.
Hi, I'm Rachel Klein. I am the Middle School Resource Teacher for DEP.
Donna Lawson, High School Resource Teacher, DEP.
Lamanda Moore Rodriguez, Zone 3 Elementary, DEP.
Hello, I'm Shashray McCormack, Zone 2 DEP. Hello, teachers. Today, I would like to share with you a great summer read. The book that I will be talking about is Multiplication is for White People, Raising Expectations for Other People's Children by Dr. Lisa Delpit. This is an absolutely amazing book. Once you see the title of it, you will see multiplication is for white people in quotation marks. And that is because of a young black girl that was being tutored on multiplication was saying, no, white people just multiply, black people add and subtract. And what that did was open up the door for Lisa Delpit to have conversations about why the dominant culture is represented in a lot of our young people, because their voices are not being heard, because they feel like that they don't have the with it all to be able to do it. And so she breaks the book into 3 different parts and shares, it's a very easy read and it flows very well. The titles of a lot of the chapters within the sections resonate very well with what is being talked about in the book. Part 1 is the inherent ability, and it talks about the achievement gap, how there is no achievement gap at birth, and that when there was some research done around kids in Africa and kids and European kids, that actually African children were outperforming European kids, and that basically the achievement gap does not happen until the kids start school. So I think that is a very important piece to talk about, since as we look at our data in JCPS, what the gaps are at individual schools. Part 2 is educating the youngest. She spends a lot of time talking about warm demanders. You will probably hear that also in a couple other books that will be mentioned here today. And the importance of teachers in the lives of children of poverty, that basically, teachers are not here to be saviors, but to be here to have high expectations for students and allow student voice. Also, part 3 is teaching adolescents, and it talks about demanding critical thinking. And she shares a lot of stories, I believe, in this part, even about her experience with her daughter, and some things that were being shared with her. And I did forget there is a part 4, the university and beyond, and it talks about the invisibility of black people in and at the university level, which I think is important too, because I feel like the universities have not done a great job of preparing teachers for what they need to know going into urban school settings. So I highly recommend this book. I don't have a whole lot of time to go into a lot of details around it, but I think, again, that it's a very easy read. There's a lot of things that I think that teachers can pick up in order to help them be more culturally responsive in their classrooms, and to be aware of what students may be feeling in the spaces and in the spaces that they occupy, that both the teacher and the students occupy together.
Okay, so the book that I chose to highlight is from Cornelius Minor, and it's called We Got This: Equity, Access, and the Quest to Be Who Our Students Need Us to Be. So I chose this book just because Cornelius has been someone that I look up to and admire since going to the teacher college several years ago. one of my colleagues had him as a teacher leader, and she just thought he was amazing. And so as we looked deeper into his work, we were so excited to hear that he had a book that was coming out. So because his life is rooted in this work. So this book is actually a pretty quick read. There are two parts in this book. The first part is called "This Ain't Everybody's Hero Story, It's Yours," and the second part is called "Taking Your Dreams Off Deferment." So a couple of chapters that I wanted to highlight in this book would be you can disrupt the status quo in your class. And so in this chapter, it's talking about how we question things that define your classroom culture, which is something that is super important as teachers for us to really take a look at, because the classroom culture relies on us. So if we are not making sure that we are cultivating that, that is something that we absolutely need to pay attention to. In there, he talked about how you should change the way you do school so that kids have more opportunities to succeed. As we move on through the future, a lot of our students are non-traditional, and how are we making sure that we're meeting their needs? Because if traditional school isn't what is helping them to be successful, then we have to change the way that we do things so that we can make sure that those students have opportunities. Another chapter that I kind of wanted to highlight in here is called Show Your Kids that you hear them. And so one of the sections in here talks about how you should plan for and hold regular class meetings to maintain community. And these aren't superficial conversations where we might be talking about the weather, what's happening, outside. This is something that you are planning for. Maybe something has gone on in your classroom that you feel warrants a conversation to be had. Maintaining community means that you're meeting with your class, you're having honest conversations, because if the classroom community isn't a place where students feel like they can learn, then that's an issue.
The book that I chose is Waking Up White by Debbie Irving. The book discusses the author's experiences and mindsets of growing up. It's an easy and relatable book. It's also an insightful and valuable read. It discusses how well-intentioned mindsets often perpetuate racism. Specifically, it talks about the role that privilege plays, socialization and identity of white Americans. It's vulnerable conversations about race, and it's a great introductory book for people who claim that they don't see color. It's a good eye-opening experience.
All right, I would like to share with you why I recommend The Dream Keepers by Gloria Ladson-Billings. If you are not aware of who she is, she's a leading educational researcher and a major proponent of critical race theory. So as the author of Dream Keepers, she does such a remarkable job of weaving her personal vignettes and anecdotes into conversations around race, culturally relevant pedagogy, and how to successfully reach African American children. I believe that narrative and storytelling spans across many cultures, and I personally, as a reader, find it easier to understand something when I can make that personal connection to a book or the content. And this book does just that. So that makes it incredibly approachable from many different viewpoints. Unlike some other books around these topics, Ladson-Billings does a wonderful job of imparting a warmth and a sense of pride around her most salient points, and that warmth makes it really impossible to not want to feel that about your own classroom and your own practices. She states that this book is a more holistic look at pedagogy in order to demonstrate that culturally relevant teaching drills far past our instructional moves and into our non-instructional actions, like a smile or a look of disapproval. And so it's due to that storytelling and that narrative nature of the book, coupled with the applicability of content, that makes this a recommendation, because it's an approachable first stop for a lot of school staffs who are beginning this journey of growing their collective consciousness around racial equity.
The book that I wanted to recommend is called Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. And I love this book because it is a great introduction to culturally responsive teaching. And we know culturally responsive teaching has become a buzzword out there, and a lot of different people are defining it in different ways. And I think that her work is important because it points out for us that culturally responsive teaching is about moving achievement. And she has the book broken into 3 sections. One, introducing us to how the brain is related to culturally responsive teaching and how we need to build background to become culturally responsive teachers. I think that's one of the reasons we thought it was important to talk about books that we could be reading over the summer. We all know that teaching doesn't really end on the last day of school, and that teachers are always planning, and talking about becoming culturally responsive means that we need to take that time to begin to reflect and think about our mindset to shift to becoming culturally responsive. A second point of her book is that she gives really clear strategies that you can use in your classroom to shift from where you are to being more culturally responsive, as well as helping you build that background to understand what culture is, the levels of culture, and how that impacts your students' learning. And so this is it's a short book, it's a quick read, and it's very teacher friendly as far as giving you strategies that you can go back to the classroom and implement immediately. So definitely recommend Zaretta Hammond, and there's lots of podcasts by her out there as well. She has a website with resources that are free. So check out Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain.